So the guy's 42 years old. He has lost the front third of his hair, so kind of like right in here. He kept his crown at this point in time, 42. Now he's starting to thin. It's not noticeable to the eye, but microscopically you can see some of that miniaturization peeking through. He does live close to the clinic he's going to be working with, which is important. It's funny, he loves a routine, doesn't mind using products, and then his hair loss is not very aggressive in his family. So all that plays a factor, into his solution. So I want to touch on that because, in that situation, you have two problems. You've got hair that's gone and you have hair that's thinning. So that does require two solutions, but there are several solutions out there. So, because you guys are both consultants, because you guys both consult very similarly but also have your differences, what would y'all tell him?
So I like this guy.
Yeah.
I love for this guy to come in for consultations because there's so many options.
Yeah.
I mean, we could look at treatment to keep the hair that he has and slightly thicken that up. We could look at a surgical solution for the front third, and that actually opens you up for a couple of different surgical solutions as well. So you've got choices at this point.
Right.
You can look at FUE or you could look at an FUT.
Yeah.
The most important thing for this patient, though, is preserving the hair that he has.
Couldn't agree more.
Let's thicken that up, knock a few years off the hair loss, and then teach that patient how to maintain that hair throughout the rest of his life.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Perfect. What about you?
Yeah, so I'd start with what are your goals and expectations. And oddly enough, that type of patient comes in, and a lot of times their concern is, I want to fill in my hairline.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even talk about keeping the hair they have because for some reason or another, they just think that's magically going to stay there. So the conversation pivots to, hey, well, what about the hair you've got? Well, it's fine. I just want to restore my hairline. I'm like, well, okay, if we restore your hairline surgically and we ignore the hair behind it and you walk back through the door in 5 years and ask me why you didn't talk to me about keeping the hair I've got, you're going to be upset with me, right? As you should be. So then we pivot to the conversation about what can we do treatment-wise to help control future hair loss, encourage the hair that he has to stay healthy, encourage some regrowth potentially, depending on the technology and the choice, and just refilling and making that hairline more robust and just reframing his face. So again, whatever his goals and expectations are, but you're right, those are two solutions that he needs, not just one.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen many cases where the patient just ignored completely advice about keeping the hair they have. And they did walk back in the door 5 years later, and they said, I'm glad you talked to me about this. I wish I'd listened. I wish I'd done this, that, or the other thing. Now what do I do?
It's one of those things where you don't think about it until you're dealing with the issue. So because they have the hair there still, they think it's going to be there forever. And I've had consultations where people are like, absolutely, teach me everything I need to do to maintain this hair. I've had other people tell me, I'll worry about it in 5 years. I'll come back and fill it in if I, if I want to. And that's fine because it's that patient. It's up to them what they want to do with their hair. But there's several solutions. So, I want to walk through primarily, we'll jump into surgical next, but primarily, what non-surgical solutions could he look at? When I'm talking with a patient, there's a couple things that I look at. Number one, their expectations. Number two, proximity to our clinic, because time is of value, right? And then number three, does this guy like a routine? Can he stick to a routine? Because there are solutions out there that require a routine and, some time and that kind of thing. And there's others that are just more convenient. And, that just plays a factor for me anyway with my patients, because the biggest thing for me is that they stay consistent, right? If I can't set them up for success, if they're not going to stay consistent with it, I relate it back to diet and exercise. If you find something that works for you, may not work for everybody, but works for you, you're going to see results because you're consistent with it versus trying to do that next thing that everybody else is doing and you don't actually enjoy it, right? So, non-surgically, what can he do to keep that hair? And then we'll jump into, surgical solutions for the front hairline.
Yeah, so for that patient, this is a perfect patient because he's routine oriented. He lives close to the clinic. So in an ideal situation, I would encourage him to do medical light therapy, also known as laser light therapy, because it's an FDA-approved process that's shown clinically to help the front, the mid-scalp, and the very back, the crown or vertex. And so we know if we can preserve the hair he has, perhaps get some regrowth in that frontal hairline a little bit, That may be all he wants. He's already routine oriented. He lives close by, as I mentioned, because those are the more robust, stronger lasers, clinical lasers. There are patients that live further away, and it's typically a different discussion. I would also remind him that wherever he goes, he's going to want to make sure that there is some type of assessment that is ongoing. So here we do typically a little spot on the scalp, several spots. We call them landmarks. We do a microscopic photograph of that area. We count the hairs in the area, not just the hairs, but the quality of the hairs. How healthy are they? And there's a scale that we use. And as our treatment proceeds, we go back to those same landmarks, take photographs again so we can see clinically how things are changing and improving. Most patients don't care about that. They want to see how do they look in the mirror? Do I look much better? Am I about the same? But that's important. Obviously, we do that too, but that clinical side is important.
So the value in the microscopic analysis that I see the most, and we use this all the time, is, a lot of treatments require topical things. We're cleaning up sebum oils, we're cleaning up fatty acids, all this stuff. And with a microscopic, you can actually see the areas that the patient's hitting and the areas the patients are missing. So by doing those type of follow-ups, we can get a better result, a thorough treatment done for that patient. I also love clinical laser therapy, LLLT. As you said, it's FDA approved. It's one of those few treatments that can actually thicken the existing hair. But as you had mentioned, it has to be a patient that's a little closer to the clinic because it is a stimulant treatment, which means it's cumulative. It means you got to have many, many treatments, like going to the gym.
Right.
You can buy that gym membership, but if you don't use it.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love laser therapy personally for patients. I don't see unhappy patients with laser. Typically, they're seeing results, they're excited, it makes a difference in the way they're looking. And then it's also because they're coming in to do treatments, they feel like they're doing something about it, which I think is really cool in the initial stages of treating hair loss, kind of like going to the gym. I love to use that analogy because it just makes sense to people. But, if you've been going to the gym for 4 or 6 weeks and you're not seeing results yet, you're still feeling like you're doing something about it, and that does something to your energy level, how you're feeling about yourself. And that's what this industry really all boils down to, is how does someone feel about themselves? And that's why we're here, right? Unfortunately, we live in a world where the way you look really determines a lot for you. The way other people perceive you, the way you perceive yourself, job opportunities, which is so crazy, but it is reality.
That's right.
Social opportunities.
Absolutely. So with that being said, just feeling better about doing something makes a big difference. There can be someone bald as can be, but if he's got lots of energy because he is doing something about it, much more attractive, and people flock to him versus someone that isn't doing anything. They're bummed out about it, right?
Yeah.
So I love laser therapy for that reason. And then the consistency of the result. It's pretty typical to see a really, really nice result. Now, it varies from person to person based on, how long they've been losing their hair, the density, the texture, the color. That all makes a difference visually, right? But as far as seeing a result, it's really consistent. So I really do, like to see that. I know with us, we typically recommend, some products along with our laser program. I'm not a huge believer in products doing a lot on their own. They're not really a standalone treatment. But, the product line that we use that has, minoxidil and a DHT inhibitor and that kind of thing, I think that, makes a big difference as well. What do y'all think?
Yeah, I think the products play a huge role in clinical laser therapy. It's the increase of blood flow, the cleaning of the scalp, the sebum oils, as I said earlier. And then, there's a lot of people that they're not good at maintenance stuff at home, like we've been talking about. Now, this gentleman is great at that, but the majority of people, we help them get on a good routine while we're monitoring them. And that's what a clinic does. It's education. That way, when that patient steps away and he's on his own, he's already educated, he knows what he needs to do. And when you know what things are actually doing, it makes it easier to do them if you understand how they work.
Right.